Hey y'all woodturners, welcome back to my shop. I want to talk to you today about making boxes, and I want to start off by giving you a source of my inspiration. That's a book called Turning Boxes by Richard Raffin. He did this back in '98, and I think he did a reprint of it about 4 years later with colored photographs, but got a lot of good information in there about turning boxes. Today I want to talk about demonstrating how to turn a mushroom box. A little simple little box like this with some natural edge on it. This is out of Bradford pear, and I'm going to make one out of Bradford pear, walk you through the steps. Box making is a lot of fun. It's a sequential project. It's very important to get the sequence right so you don't get someplace where you can't get back to where you want to be, if that makes any sense. And maybe it'll make more sense as we go through it. The size of this, the wood blank, should be somewhere maybe 3.5 to 5 inches in diameter. The blank needs to be probably maybe 5 inches or so long. If you make one smaller than that, you're not going to have a practical box size. A typical box that I make is about 2 inches, and that's because a lot of them are made out of exotic woods, and the blanks come in about 2 inch by 2 inch sticks. So it needs to be at least that size. So you'll have a reasonably sized box. This particular box is threaded. The one we're going to make is just going to have straight sides to it. Now, when you turn green wood, and generally when you make something like a mushroom box, it is going to have to be green wood. You're going to get some wood movement. There's several techniques that you can do to minimize that. One, bring the blank inside the house and let it sit for a while, however long that is. Get rid of some of you don't want it slinging wet, I guess is what I'm saying, so you want it dry a little bit. The other thing is I typically make them out of a branch. You want to get one where, as much as possible, the pith is centered. Some of the other tricks are you can rough turn it, as I've demonstrated in a previous video on how to rough turn a box. You can rough turn it, let it dry, and then final turn it. The other step you can do is make sure you have a loose fit. And let's get started. First, we're going to take a piece and we're going to go with the bandsaw. Usually I do most of my boxes using a chuck, but today, just for variation, I'm going to use the old school approach, and we're going to actually use threaded glue blocks instead of a chuck. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and take this blank over to the chainsaw and cut it in the proportions of the base and the body, so I can put each end on a separate glue block. So let's do that now. Okay, the main thing you got to remember when you're cutting something round like this on a bandsaw, as I've communicated before, I did a video on wood turning, using a bandsaw for wood turners. You want to make sure you've got some way of securing that round block, because this blade is going to take it, and if it's unsupported, it's going to spin it in your hand, and only bad things can happen. So make you a simple jig like this, a V-jig carriage, to make it a little bit easier, or you can put it in a wood clamp. I typically use a Fibonacci scale just to get roughly proportions of about 1/3, 2/3. This makes it a little bit faster. So I take 1/3 and then leave a skosh more on the base for the tenon. So lining that up, I've just about got it lined up where I want to cut it, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that end off and then mount it on glue blocks. Then we're going to go. I'll meet you back at the lathe. Okay, as I mentioned, we're going to use threaded glue blocks. I made these a while back, and I think I might have mentioned I did a video on making these using the Beal tap. That's a fast, easy, and inexpensive way of making a lot of face plates made out of inexpensive poplar. You can use a face plate if that's what you got. In that case, you'd probably do just the lid, then take the screws off and make sure the screws aren't so long, and then when you're shaping it, that you don't cut into the screw area. But you could shape it where you remove it where the screws are after you put it on the base, and we'll get to that later. So that's an option, and you could get away with one faceplate by doing it sequentially, first doing the lid and then doing the base. But we're going to use these blocks and use thick CA. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the CA on here, and I'm going to put the accelerator on here. Let me put the top back on the glue before I get the accelerator everywhere. And I'm not going to get crazy about getting this thing centered, because this is a mushroom box. And if it's off center a little bit, that'll be fine. So there's that one. I'll set that aside to dry. And then this one, this got a little wax on this end, so that's going to be the open end, and I'll put the part that doesn't have wax. Again, I'm just going to eyeball this. Getting pretty close. We're going to give that a couple of minutes to set up, and then we're going to start with the lid. Meet you back at the lathe. Okay, we're ready to get started. First thing we do is we want to make sure we've got a good glue joint on here. One way to do that is just kind of wrap it and make sure it's not going to come loose so we feel comfortable. So we're going to go ahead and put this on there. As I mentioned before, this is a sequential project, so let me show this little flip chart slide of the sequence that we're going to be using as I get ready to finish getting set up here. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to make the lid. We're going to make a shape look something like this. So I'm just going to shape the back just a little bit, maybe down to the glue block, and then we'll come back and deal with that. Then I'll concave it slightly and then hollow it out. Make sure it's clearing the tool rest. Make sure it speeds down. Ramp up the speed. Check our progress. I think I mentioned before how much I do like turning Bradford pear. It's such a clean turning wood. So I'm going to come back just a little bit more closer to the edge. Before I do that, I think I'm going to go ahead and taper the center just a little bit. So reposition my tool rest so I can cut on center. Rotate, make sure. Okay, clear. Now I'm going to brace this because I know it's going to want to kick back a little bit. Just get a slight concave on the bottom. Let's mark an approximate size, and I'm just guesstimating of. I'll look at the size of that. No, I want it a little bit bigger. Maybe just a hair bigger than that. Form follows function, and if you got a box that's not big enough to put anything in, then it's not going to be really useful. So we're going to do that. Okay, when I hollow a box or a bowl or most things, I tend to do a center hole. So let me go ahead and do that. First thing I'm going to do is kind of mark a very gentle cone for the drill bit to follow. That's to keep the drill bit from wandering. If you don't give a starter hole, you're going to have a tendency for it to wander. And then I use this 1/4 inch drill bit that I've got mounted in a handle, and I've got it marked, so I'm going to kind of eyeball how deep I want it. It's to be that notch there. I've got some notches I put on there with a Dremel tool. There we go. So I'll know when we get to the bottom that we'll be deep enough. Now the technique I'm going to use for hollowing is I'm going to do most of this hollowing with a spindle gouge, and I may switch to one with a slightly steeper, blunter grind. This is about 45 degrees, and I've got one about 60, so let's go ahead and get started. And we just go here and we just sweep. Adjust that tool rest up just a little bit. We're just going to sweep in from the center to the outside and go a little deeper and keep making that sweep, and as a result we're slicing. You do it this way, as some people will do, and I'm here to give my normal disclaimer. The way I do it is not the only way. It may not be the best way, but it's the way that I do it, and I believe for in-grain hollowing you're better off slicing the fibers from the inside out. So let's get started. Now to get rid of the little bit of a nib at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and use a scraper. That's the easiest way. In the negative rake, that is, the handle is going to be slightly higher. So let's just go ahead and clean that up just a little bit. That's going to be good. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to hollow the walls, or we're going to make the walls parallel by using a square nose type of scraper. I'm going to use a box scraper with this profile. It's sharpened along the front and it's sharpened on the side. It's got a, I don't know if you can see that angle, maybe a 70-degree bevel like this. And when you come in, you're going to kind of cock the tool forward because you want that wall to be parallel with this side right there, and then we're going to check it. It's real important to get parallel walls. And that's all we're doing with this, is getting parallel walls. So I'm just lining this line up with the bedway. I'm reaching for a 6-inch caliper. There's a couple of ways you can check for parallel walls. You can use calipers and adjust to see, is it tighter in the bottom. You know, when you move it out, do you feel the same amount of friction? That's one way. A way that I like to use is these 6-inch calipers, and I just hold it against the wall there and then eyeball it along here, and that looks good. So now that I've got that, I'm going to go back and do a little more cleaning to join the bottom curve with that edge, get rid of that sharp edge. Now I said this is a sequential process. One of the keys to that process is you need to finish the inside of this before you remove it from your holding device, whether it's a chuck or a block. So we're going to go ahead and do a little sanding. I think we're going to go off camera for that sanding, and then I'll meet you back here. Okay, I finished sanding, and now we're going to go ahead and apply some finish. First thing I'm going to do is I use a product I really like. Before I finish, you don't sand the inside recess. You leave that as it's cut. If you do sand it, you might touch it with 600 grit, but I don't even bother to do that. So I'm going to use a product that I really like. It's called Triple E Ultra Shine. It's from Australia. It's got a Triple E in it, which is an abrasive compound similar to that on the Triple E wheel on the Beal Buff. And I'm going to try to be careful not to get that on the tenon. Just rub it in there a little bit. And rub it on the outside. And we're going to crank this thing up. We'll stand out of the way in case it comes flying off. We're going to get it up to around 1800. Go in there very carefully. This is not very deep, so I don't mind putting my fingers inside. Now that we got that cleaned up, now we're going to go ahead and put a finish. Final finish on it. Again, not on the recess. And for this project, I'm using Mahoney's oil wax finish. It's got some walnut oil and some wax. It smells real nice, which is nice for a box. Plus, it's super fast. You put it on there and it's done. It doesn't get real shiny. And there's an old expression. It says shiny cells. But we're going to just make this a kind of a matte satin type of finish. Put that away. And that shines up very nicely. Friction kind of rubs it in. Like I say, it has a very nice smell, which for a box is good. If you do use antique oil, make sure that thing's perfectly dry before you give it away or sell it. Some lady opens it up and takes a whiff, and she can smell any of the finish. It's not going to be real pleasing to a customer or the gift recipient. So now we've got that's done. So now I'm going to go ahead and bring this shape back a little bit here, back to the here, and go ahead and part it off, and then we'll do any final shaping when we get to the box lid. And we'll do the final finishing of this when it's on the base, so I'm not going to get crazy about that. So I'm going to go ahead and start parting it off, and for this I'm going to use a thin parting tool, part down a little ways to do a little more touch up. Well, didn't expect it to snap through. That's okay. I wasn't going that fast. So if you're going around 1,000, you can see it drops down and it's not likely to hurt you. So we've got that done, and we'll finish shaping it when it's on the base. Usually at this point in time, I'm not going to take the time, but while it's on here, I go ahead and trim this up, clean it up, and get it ready for the next project. But I'll worry about that later. Now we'll put on the base. Again, yep, pretty strong. CA glue really is a very strong, don't use thin, use medium or thick, and test it, but it really is a very strong finish. Now in this case, this is the orientation, this is going to be the base. We're going to hollow it out. So the first thing I want to do is roughly size the tenon to fit this before I do any hollowing. Before I hit it with a parting tool, I think I'm just going to touch up the edge a little bit here. Get rid of this bark. Get it round. I'm just going to chamfer this just a little bit. Still not there. So the square cut again, a little chamfer, just to get some successive approximation. Whoa, too much. That's okay. We'll just make sure the rest of it fits. Now, that's a good teaching point. I went too far down here and got it too loose. And the point is, that's one of the reasons why when you do an overfitting lid, you always do the lid first, because you can correct this. I could just part that off and just bring this tenon down, and all I've done is a minor design change on the length of the box. But if you mess up with the lid, you got usually one shot at it, and then you got to start all over again. Lets us know about where we need to be, and we have to make a judgment as to how deep that. We have to make a judgment as to how deep that or long that tenon is going to be. It can't be longer than the recess. So let's just measure that, and I find somewhere around 3/8 is good, and that's just a shade under 3/8 of an inch. So we're going to say the tenon, we're going to go for a tenon 5/16 of an inch. I'm just going to back this off just a shade. Oop, I lost the little bead on top of my caliper.